Hi, this is Star Thinker again, Randy Pischel. By the way, I was Star Thinker in 1979, so it predates the internet. Anyway, uh, I wanted to be a little bit pandemic today about what I wanted to talk about with this treasure hunt, and I wanted to go back to the point that I made in my other two videos. Was um, when this started, Forrest Fenn put out a poem, and he said, "This is the poem to the treasure." And the poem was freely available. He wasn't selling it. He wasn't trying to make money on it. And his claim was he was trying to give back. So he wrote the poem and he said, "Here's my poem. Go find my treasure." And I think that's important because not trying to make money on it, I think that changes things. Of course, other people and there's people writing books and people doing stuff that do kind of make money on it. I think that's why he ended up writing the book and putting out the maps and stuff. But I wanted to go to the maps because I realized as I'm looking at them there was two different versions. And I know at some point he said if you knew where the treasure was, you could find it on the map. Now technically you could find anything on that map of 4 states. I know Aurora, Colorado is just south of Denver, and if I go, well, here's Denver, there's Aurora, Colorado. It's not technically on the map, but I found it on the map. So I think he meant more along the lines is there's something labeled on the map. If it's in Denver, Colorado, you can point to it and say, there's Denver on the map. He also has like several parks listed. He also, he has lots of things listed on the map. And the first map did not have a compass on it. Now that's kind of rare because if you look at any map, there's something that points to north. And there's not a compass on it, but he's got the degrees of inclination from the North Pole to magnetic north. And I thought that was a weird thing to include because most maps won't have that. In fact, this is like the first map I've seen that had that. Unless you were doing something specifically with magnetic North Pole, I can't see why you would put that on the map. Now the second map did away with those lines. It did have like an arrowhead compass that told you which way north was. And I just, that kind of struck me as odd too. The other odd thing is on the first map, he lists all the different types of public lands. And on the second map, he did away with all that. There's no public lands. It's just a map of the region. And watching this interview the other day about him discussing the different types of public land, and I think he was worried about that at one point, and I think he hit it and then started worrying about, well, what if the park or what if wherever I put this starts raising a fuss that I use their land for my treasure hunt. And then at some point something alleviated that fear because the second map doesn't have any of the public lands on it. It's just a map. And again, I think that's important. I don't know how or why, but I think that's not a clue, but it's just something to give you some insight into what he's thinking. The other thing I want to talk about was like specific definitions. And there's some definitions I don't, I've only been doing this for about a couple weeks and I haven't seen every thread and everything, but I'm reading everything I can on it and what everybody else is thinking about it. But I wanted to start with the first clue, where warm waters halt. And I spent about an hour this morning looking up definitions. Again, from what I hear from one of his interviews, he says get a dictionary or something like that. So where warm waters halt, I mean, that's the big clue. That's where you got to start. It's like Indiana Jones. They had the map, but they didn't know where to start on the map, so that it was pretty much useless. So you got to find where warm waters halt. And that could mean several things. Now, I said in my last clue that, this whole thing fits a train, but it doesn't. And one of the things that fits but doesn't fit is that a steam locomotive doesn't have warm water in it. It has boiling hot water in it. You don't think of that as warm. Again, a hot spring. They call it hot springs for a reason. It's hot. It's not a warm spring. So the word warm itself is like, I think people are taking that too, well, you got to take it literally, but at what point does a hot spring become a warm creek, become something that halts? And it brings me to my next point. Halt is a verb meaning to stop. Now, I'm going to use the analogy that my kitchen floor is linoleum and my parlor floor is hardwood. There's a point where my kitchen floor stops, but there's not a point where my kitchen floor halts because it's not moving. To halt, something needs to be moving and then to stop moving. In every definition, it's like it implies something is in action and then it stops being in action. And one definition that kind of deviates from that is a halting movement. And he doesn't say halting, he says halt. Now, if he said halting, I would think maybe a waterfall, because it would stop and go, like a step waterfall. That's where a warm, technically, if you're still thinking of warm waters as a creek or stream or something along that line, it could be where that halts. But there's another definition that I haven't seen anyone talk, and I purposely Googled that this morning when I was reading through the definitions, and that is halt can mean stopping something else. So if I'm walking through the forest and I come across a warm stream and I can't go any further, that warm stream halted me. So it might not be where warm waters halt, like where the waters themselves halt, but where warm waters halt you. So you could be moving and then you get to a point where there's warm waters and you can't move anymore. You've been halted by the warm waters. So it could be a place where you have to stop because there's something with warm water that's stopping you. So begin at where warm waters halt. Begin at where warm waters halt could mean you got to go someplace where you're stopped, and that's where you start, basically. And then there's that word it. Begin it. Begin the hunt, begin the trail, begin. I mean, it has so many meanings you can't go into that. And then the very next line, and take it in the canyon down. Take the trail, take the hunt, take your adventure, it can mean so many things. So take it in the canyon down. I'm still working on that one. And then I'm going to jump down, below the home of Brown. I can't remember if he said the home of Brown wasn't a structure or if he said the treasure wasn't hidden in a structure. Because there's a difference there. Home of Brown, when you think of it, a home is where something lives, or where something resides. And everyone's making a big deal about capitalizing the word Brown, so it could be the house of Brown. And I keep coming back to Molly Brown's house in Denver, and she also had a house in not Telluride, Leadville, but there's no Leadville on the map. And again, I'm going to come back to that, but the end is ever drawing nigh. There'll be no paddle up your creek, just heavy loads and water high. To me, again, coming back to the railway analogy, heavy loads, that's what trains do. They carry heavy loads. Water high can mean a high source of water for feeding into the steam engines. It can also mean a water tower. I know he said no structures, but I'm not sure what context that was in. But water high to me just feels like a water tower. But then the next line, if you've been wise and found the blaze. Now, blaze, I looked this up, and of course there's a lot of definitions of this. A blaze can mean a bright spot where sun shines through. A blaze can mean hell. It can mean it could mean it said specifically a white line down an animal's face, like a skunk. It could mean streaks in your hair, but in context of wilderness, a blaze is where you mark a trail. And a lot of the definitions I saw, it was specifically where you'd notch a tree. Hence the phrase, you've blazed the trail, you've marked the trail. So a trail marker, if you've been wise and found the trail marker, look quickly down your quest to cease. And this always, I'm wondering about this too. Look quickly down. Why do you got to look quickly down? Quickly has a lot of definitions too, but it implies swiftly to look down. And why would you have to do that unless something's moving? And again, I come back to the train analogy. If you're on a train and you're passing the point where the treasure is, you got to catch it or you're not going to see it. And I know you don't have to be on a train because he pulled up in a car and he walked twice from the car. But that doesn't mean it can't be near a railroad track or something along that line. But again, that works, but it doesn't work. So it's like, I don't know. It's one of those things that you have to toy with. You know, like I said, maybe there's a play on words in there somewhere. But if you've been wise and found the trail marker, look quickly down, and again, quickly. Let me pull up the definition of quickly here. Quickly defined. So quickly, and I've been using the Merriam-Webster website. Fast, done with rapidity, fast in understanding, thinking, learning, and mentally agile. Look quickly down. If you're fast in understanding, that could mean like if you see the trail marker and you understand that's where you got to look down. But most of these all have to do, well, a sharp angle. Quickly means having a sharp angle, a quick turn in the road. Look quickly down, you're looking down a sharp angle. That, again, that makes more sense to me than a period of time. Caustic, look quickly down. That's almost an adverb, which again, if you're using it as an adverb, it means a quick motion. Definition of quick. Does it say this is an adverb? It could also mean moving and shifting. Again, you're talking about motion. You know, shiftingly look down. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I like the idea of having a sharp angle. Look quickly down. You're looking down a sharp angle. So it's a trail marker, and you're looking quickly down, and your quest to cease. He says, but don't hang around marveling at the sight, you know, because if you look down and see the treasure, you're probably going to go, oh, I found the treasure. You don't marvel. But he says, pick it up and go in peace. So he's like, maybe he doesn't want attention drawn to it, because I still think he's worried about where he put it. So I think he wants you to pick it up and just quietly walk to your car and make no big deal out of it. Because if you draw attention to yourself, I got to tell you, when we were in Anita State Park in Iowa, that is where the snail from the treasure trove was hidden. And when I was there was probably 5 or 6 other people there hunting for it. So when I figured out the solve, and I was like, that's in Anita State Park, other people had gone there, and it might have been solved earlier. I don't know, but I mean, I had solved about 6 of the clues in the book, and this was the one because I was too broke to go to any other location. But I was like, oh, this one's in Iowa. Let's go there because I'm in Iowa. So, you know, when we searched this area over and over and over again. My son was there, and we didn't find anything. So I'm like, let's get out of here. Let's turn the truck around, because I had a big Suburban. And he says, you go turn the truck around. I want to look one more time. And when he found it, I mean, he grabbed it. He held it up above his hand. He's like, I found it. I found it. And when I turned the truck around, the first thing I saw was him running down the road going, I found it. I found it. So he was like marveling that he found it. And what he's, you know, when you look at the poem, it says, but Terry Scant with marvel gaze, just take the chest and go a piece. I think he's saying, when you find it, don't do that. Pick it up and quietly walk away. You know, to me, this implies a place where there's people watching, where people can see you. Maybe there's a camera. Maybe he's afraid because of the worth of it, someone might tackle you and take it away from you, because it's not really yours, you know, until you have the title, I guess, you know, when you read the rest of the poem. It's just like a lottery ticket. If you win the lottery and you don't sign your ticket, anyone can turn that ticket in. And so you want to make sure your name is on the treasure. So, that could mean a lot of things. So hear me all, listen good. Your effort will be worth the cold. Um, I think this is in a cold place, and I think it's up high. And I can't remember. He said somewhere it's above a certain elevation. I'll have to look that up. Again, I'm going by just the poem. I'm trying not to go by what he said in interviews and what people have said in books or whatever. But you keep coming back to those anyway. Um, the answer I already know. I've done it. Tired, and now I'm weak. Uh, that might be where he said he parked the car and gone up a couple times. Uh, but anyway, I'm just thinking these are plays on word. And again, I haven't seen any place where people talked about where something stops you in the manner of halting. You know, it could be a place where there's whatever has warm water in it. It could be, you know, and again, being pandemic, because he said get a dictionary. A hot spring is hot. A boiler is boiling hot. Things are hot until, you know, at what point is hot warm? You know, if you're too close to the spring, is that a hot creek? And then you got to go down and it's cold creek. And then somewhere in between, it's a warm creek. I think that's too vague. I mean, that's too, you know, what's warm to me might be hot to you. What's cold to me might be warm to you. And I think that's just too vague. So where warm waters halt, you know, it could be a place where there's warm water, but it stops you from moving. The warm waters halted you. You know, like I said, I'm walking somewhere and there's something with warm water in it, and now I can't go any further. That's where warm waters halt. It halted me. And it would halt anybody. It's saying where warm waters halt, it's stopping everybody from getting through. It's like a wall. A wall will halt you from going any further, and it will halt everybody else from going any further. So there's different definitions here. I also want to point out, you know, as I was trying to find a version of the map that I could really blow up, and I couldn't. Even the official rasterized version, it just, when you blow it up, it's so blurry you can't read it. But I noticed in Montana, he prominently put Browning, Montana. And I think that's a red herring, so that people would think home of Brown would be Browning, Montana. And I think he might have stretched the map far enough to get that. So when you're looking north in Montana and even in Wyoming, I think I think that's part of a red herring. He just wanted Browning on the map because the map didn't exist. All he said before, and again, I come back to the beginning of the hunt where all we had was the poem. He said it's somewhere in the Rocky Mountains and all you need is this poem. So I believe you can solve this with just the poem and without the maps and without the interviews and without all that. But when, you know, I think this was in response to people getting hurt and people dying and people going to great extremes. He wanted to say, look, it's not in a place where you have to rappel down a cliff, you know. That's dangerous. I'd be stupid. You know, I did it. I walked up and put this somewhere. I did not rappel down a cliff. So I think in response to that, he said, listen, I'll narrow it down to these 4 states. And I think he stretched that to include Browning. And that's just my opinion, because that's something I would do. I would, you know, if a clue pointed to something that inadvertently pointed to, I might say, hey, I'm going to put that in somewhere just so people might get sidetracked on that. But again, when he started this, he wasn't trying to make money. I don't know if he sells these maps. I mean, they're so freely available online. I can't imagine anyone's trying to sell them. And the poem is everywhere, but the poem came out first, and you got to be able to solve it with the poem. So if you got a clue or you got something that doesn't apply to the poem, I think that's a stretch. You might have something that Forrest Fenn himself said. You might have something he let loose in a interview. Also, I think he says some, like I said before, if you know where the treasure is, you can find it on the map. So, and like I said, any place is findable on a map. I know where I go camping. I can point to it on the map because I know where I go camping is, you know, west of Denver and south. And, but I think he meant, you know, if you're going to find it in Durango, California. I'm looking up at the map. My computer is mounted high up on a wall. Like I mounted it way too high, so I gotta look up to it. But if I can see Durango, Colorado on there. So if I know the treasure, if I come up with a solve, I'm like, oh look, it's near Durango, and I look at the map, I'm like, oh, Durango's on the map. Maybe that's what he meant. If I say, okay, it's in Leadville because that's where Molly Brown had a home, I don't see Leadville on the map anywhere. So maybe that's not a correct solve. But that might be picking nits. That came out after the poem. So I think maybe somewhere he did sneak. Maybe it's the name of a river or a lake. That's another thing. Where warm waters halt. Going back to the floor analogy, where a river meets a lake, that river ceases to become the river and becomes the lake. So that could be another place where warm waters halt. Again, it's not a dam. I believe you said there's not a dam involved. But if a creek runs into a lake and the lake is cold and the creek is warm, again, that's probably what everyone is looking for right now. But when I was looking at this morning, I was thinking, it doesn't mean the warm waters are halting, but it could mean the warm waters are halting you. But anyway, I keep coming back to that point because that was like my revelation this morning. But I was going through all these words in the dictionary. Like for instance, let me look this one up. So no place for the meek. And I'm looking here, of course it means deficient in spirit, deficient in courage, not violent or strong, enduring injury. So, those are the only things on there. Definition of meek. It's an adjective. So it's no place for someone who's not brave. It's no place for someone who's not strong. It's not a place for someone who's submissive. So to me, I don't know that. I don't know if that means anything. No place for the meek. Why do you have to be brave to go there? And again, and the end is ever drawing nigh. This tells me like the trail might be near a cliff, not where you're going to fall off and kill yourself, or someplace where if you're not really brave, you don't want to go there. Again, this whole video is about being pandemic, and I don't know. Then there's no paddle up your creek, so I'm gonna have to go into this a little bit more. I still think it has to do with a train or a trail that has stops along it, that goes along some kind of cliff or someplace up high. And of course, like the Grand Canyon's not on here. And I know at first people were looking at the Grand Canyon, people were looking at the Colorado River, because it halts, in Baja, is it Baja Bay? I'm not sure, but by the Baja Peninsula. People were looking all over, and I think that's lost on people who are getting into the hunt now, that there wasn't a map before, and people were looking all over the western United States. And I think Forrest wants to be not involved in his hunt, but he wants someone to win before he dies, I believe. And towards that end, when he's getting frustrated, he's like, no one's coming. People are coming 200 feet from it or 500 feet, but they didn't see it, and he gets frustrated. So he's like, let me narrow it down. Let me give you this map. Let me narrow it down. Let me tell you that I ran from the car twice. Let me narrow it down. So I think he's trying to give clues, but he's not giving clues. And that's one thing I said I would never do. I know I've let loose some clues I didn't mean to in some of these videos, but I think he's like, come on, people. Because it's easy when you write the clue, it's easy for you to see what the clue is. And sometimes it's hard for you to see why it's not obvious to other people. And So he's probably sitting there going, it's so freaking obvious, but no one's seeing it. And I can see where that's frustrating. And I kind of love that. There's places online where people talk about clues in my book, and some people I'm like, oh, this guy's spot on. And then there's other people I'm like, this guy is so far from the mark. If he keeps following this line of thinking, he's lost forever. But I don't get frustrated. I promised myself I would never get frustrated with people not finding it or coming too close to it or something. But I think he is. I think he put this out because he thought he was going to die and he wanted someone to find his treasure. And he probably thought, even when he thought he was going to die, he probably thought someone was going to find it in his lifetime. And now his lifetime's been extended and no one's found it yet. And he's like, it's so obvious. And no one's finding it. And I think there might be clues in the fact that the second map is so different from the first map. Because again, I think he's like, I'm going to change something to make it a little more obvious. And he plays like, I'm not going to tell you that. But I think deep down inside, he's like, how can I tell them that without telling them that? But anyway, those are my thoughts. And I already went like 10 minutes over what I wanted to go over. So those are some of my thoughts. Those are some things to think about. Like I said, I don't think I've read anywhere.
Let's make a deal. Ooh, ah, why? Get away. Separated. This time. Destiny. Happy.
Alexa, stop.
First love.
I have no idea what triggered that. Did I say Alexa at some point? Anyway, I am going to sign off because that was too weird. But some things to think about. Like I said, I don't think I've seen anyone talk about where warm waters halt, meaning where you have to stop for warm waters. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And again, a lot of people came up with the train analogy. A lot of people everything I've come up with, a lot of people have come up with. But there's some things I come up with where I'm like, I don't find this anywhere. So I think that's interesting. And those are the kind of things you want to throw out there to help other people think, because I think this is a group thing. I talked about the jelly bean theorem in my last video, and I think the more people that think about it, it's going to vector into the solve, and hopefully that'll happen soon. Probably not this winter, because when winter sets in, that kind of cools things down. But where warm waters halt is a time in the year, maybe. So anyway, I'm going to sign off. Those are my thoughts of the day, and I thought I'd get those out there before I fell asleep again. So take care, and I'll see y'all later. I'm Star Thinker. Don't forget to look for my book on Amazon, The Beacon Star. My book is more steganography, cryptology. I think this is a riddle. We got to solve a riddle on this one, and it's not so much anything is encoded, anything is hidden. It's a riddle. And that's a whole different ball game. So anyway, I'm signing off. I'll talk to you later. I'm Star Thinker, Randy Pischel, and I'll talk to you later.